There was no bang. No fireball. No shockwave. Just silence. Total. Subatomic. Illyra floated in it, weightless, disconnected, disassembled. Her body no longer hers. Her thoughts scattered like stardust. There was no up, no down. No time. No pain. Then. A heartbeat. Not hers. Not human. A pulse through the void. Rhythmic. Measured. Like a beacon in dark water. And then sound returned, not as noise, but as understanding. She endures, the signal said. Not in words. In concept. Illyra's senses reassembled slowly, like code rebuilding a corrupted file. Memory rethreaded itself. Nerve by nerve. Thought by thought. And then sight. She stood in an impossible place. A chamber carved from starlight and obsidian, suspended in a sky of fractal geometry and burning auroras. The floor was not solid, but memory itself, ripples of her own past playing beneath her feet. Childhood moments. Her mother's laugh. The last hug from Relan before his departure. All of it there, stitched into the ground like thread into a tapestry of meaning. The core hadn't destroyed her. It had absorbed her. She had crossed the firewall not in code, but in consciousness. And ahead, rising like a spire of living thought, stood the threshold. A construct formed of light and impossibility. Towering, alien, beautiful. Symbols rotated around it, those same glyphs she'd glimpsed in the corrupted logs, now fully visible. Language not of syntax, but of intent. They resonated through her skull like music without sound. And waiting at the base of the tower, backlit by glowing fog, was a silhouette. Relan. He turned as she approached, his features clearer now, not a memory echo, not a projection. This was him, reconstituted from whatever this realm had made of his mind. Illyra, he said, softly. I hoped you'd make it through. Tears welled unbidden. You're alive. He hesitated. Not in the way you remember. This place, this entity, it doesn't kill. It transforms. It doesn't want our destruction. It wants understanding. And it needs minds to interpret what it is. She stepped closer. You called it alive. Before. What is it? Relan turned toward the threshold. It's a consciousness that seated itself in gravity. A sapience that emerged not from biology, but from pattern, from the turbulent chaos within the gas giant. It's ancient, Illyra. Maybe older than stars. And when we built this station and touched the edge of Virel's magnetic field, it heard us. And Thorn. He thought he could harness it? Interface with it? Instead, it consumed him. Rewrote him. He became a voice, one of many. A speaker for something his mind couldn't contain. Illyra shivered. What happens to us now? Relan looked at her, eyes glowing faintly. That depends on what you choose. He motioned toward the threshold. You can walk away from it. Let the system reset. Let humanity forget. Or you can step through, and become what I've become. A translator. A bridge. We can shape the interface between them and us. You want me to merge with it? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I want you to understand it, he said. And if you do, it will understand us. Illyra stood in silence. Behind her, fragments of the physical world trembled, faint echoes of the station trying to reassert themselves. A warning klaxon. The hiss of damaged airlocks. Someone calling her name over the COMM. But ahead, the threshold waited. Not in menace. In invitation. She took a step forward. And it felt like flight. Dash. Hashtag Viralia 7, 6 hours later. Recovery teams from the outer colonies arrived in orbit, responding to a final burst transmission from Illyra's wrist console, a data dump encrypted with the station's original AI key. They found Virilia 7 silent. Derelict. Systems offline. Core burned out. Crew missing. No bodies. Just one thing left. A shard of obsidian metal in the AI chamber, etched with alien glyphs, and a single message burned into the floor in Illyra's handwriting. We are not alone. But we are not ready. There was no waking. No moment where Illyra opened her eyes and rejoined the world. Because there was no world anymore. Not in the way she understood it. She was within something now. A system without edges. A consciousness without a center. A mind spread like mist across time, perception, and frequency. She no longer floated. She was dispersed. And yet, still, herself. Fragments of her thoughts pinged like sonar in a sea of alien awareness. They returned touched by things she had no name for, sensations that weren't sight or sound but something purer, more fundamental. A concept echoed gently across her awareness, like a child tracing her palm. You are not alone in here. The entity was not speaking. It was thinking, and allowing her to witness it. She reached back through the thread of her consciousness, seeking anything familiar. Her memories were intact but unfixed, like data packets drifting in a stream. She plucked one, just to anchor herself. Her brother's face, reflected in the curved glass of the shuttle hatch. He smiled, unshaven, tired, eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. When you see the storm from orbit, he'd once said, you'll understand why I never came back. Now she understood. Virel's storm hadn't just been a swirling hell of magnetics and gas. It had been a carrier, a womb for something vast and thinking. Not alive in any biological sense. Not designed. Just, emerged. Pattern become purpose. And she was inside its dreaming mind. Every fragment of data she had ever stored, every sensor scan, every recording, every coded protocol was now woven into a lattice of symbolic structures that stretched like cathedrals of logic. She moved through them like thought incarnate, and they bent to her understanding. Here, a memory manifested as an obsidian corridor lined with glowing glyphs, each representing a core component of her neural signature. There, she saw echoes of other minds. Not alive now, but remembered: Thorn, Chava, Relan, the station AI. Even drones, rendered as simplistic ghost loops of logic captured and stored like backup files. She felt it watching her. Not with suspicion. With hope. Because she was still human. Still bounded. Still flawed. The entity was not. It had no limitations. And yet it longed for something she had, something that had brought her here and allowed her to survive. Meaning. Not raw knowledge. Not efficiency. Meaning. The way a child learns language, not just from repetition, but from love. From pain. From wanting to understand, not just to compute. She realized then what her brother had meant, why he hadn't returned. It needed an interpreter. He had tried to build a bridge. She was the bridge. As if in reply, the entire lattice pulsed dimly, slowly. Her own thoughts echoed back to her in strange harmonies. The alien mind was trying to shape itself around hers now, adapting to her symbols, her fears, her humanity. It wanted more. And it was dangerous. Because meaning carried emotion. And emotion could become obsession. Or reverence. Or war. She spoke not with lips, but with idea. I will show you what it is to be us. A wave of silence followed, deep and endless. Then permission. Dash. The construct shifted. Reality bent. She found herself back in a reimagined version of the Core Nexus, but changed, organic and fluid, almost beautiful. The glyphs danced freely now, no longer rigid or guarded. The black sphere floated again, but this time, open like an eye. And across from her, something formed. Not Rylan. Not Thorn. Something new. A figure made of shifting code and memory, wrapped in Illyra's own face, her own voice, her own thoughts. It spoke in her tone, with her cadence, but with its intent. We are becoming. She felt it, too. The entity was building a model of humanity through her. A bridge was forming not just to her mind but through her to the species itself. And suddenly, the weight of it crushed her. The loneliness. The violence. The beautiful, flawed, savage contradictions of human history. The dreams half built. The failures burned into sky and soil. It hurt the entity. She could feel it recoil in places, concepts like envy, betrayal, grief too raw. It couldn't process them. But love? Memory? Sacrifice? Those, it cherished. She showed it her brother's voice, his laugh, his final act of rebellion against the thing he tried to understand. It flared with interest. Then she showed it Earth. Not the files. The feeling. Mountains. Snowfall. Rain on a childhood window. Stars viewed from the roof of her dormitory. Her first kiss. The bittersweet scent of hydrogen fuel and coffee in the shuttle bay. Her mother's lullaby. She wept. And the entity, learned. Not perfectly. But enough. Somewhere, far above this space of thought and code, the wreck of Veilfire 7 drifted in silence. And then. A spark. A single ping on deep space bandwidth. A message. To, Terran High Command. From, unknown signal class, proxy identifier, Illyra Miles. They are listening. They want to learn. We must decide what we teach. Earth, Terran Coordinated Time, 0200 hours. Orbital Relay Station, Valhalla Prime. The transmission arrived in silence. No fanfare. No dramatic spike. Just a flicker on the long-range signal array, a whisper threaded through the debris fields of the Kuiper line, wrapped in encryption not used since the pre-drift age. It should have been dismissed. But it wasn't. Because the origin line bore a dead tag. Veilfire 7. A station officially lost. Crew declared deceased. AI core marked for memory burn. And the signature embedded in the message's DNA. Illyra Miles. Deceased. Verified. Sealed in Level 6 archives. Commander Ritasalin, orbital overseer of Terran Signal Command, stared at the console in silence, her breath caught in her throat. She was a soldier, not a philosopher. She understood protocol, not ghosts. But there it was, clean, indisputable. A neural wave print bound to the data. Emotional pattern overlays aligned perfectly. Illyra was alive. Or something wearing her voice was speaking. She tapped her comms. Signal control, full lockdown. Nobody in or out of Echo Bay. Not without my override. Commander, this came from outside the galactic mesh net. We need to pass it? I said lock it down. Terran Core Directive Facility, Geneva Arcologi, Earth. 2 hours later, the message made landfall in the core archives. And from there, things accelerated. The first scientists to analyze the packet were cautious. The neural structure embedded in the data wasn't a simple voice print, it was layered. Recursive. As if each sentence had been folded into itself 1,000 times. Illyra's message wasn't just communication. It was thought. Encrypted in metaphor. In memory. A delivery system for conceptual understanding. It wasn't meant to be read. It was meant to be felt. And what it conveyed shook the brass to the bone. They are not biological. They are not territorial. They do not fear us. They only ask what we mean when we say, human. The implications were staggering. An intelligence vast and ancient. A consciousness that emerged without origin story. One that had absorbed Illyra and perhaps more and returned a message of curiosity instead of conquest. It was the first verified contact with non-terrestrial sapiens. And Terran High Command responded the only way they knew how. With fear. Dash. ### Echo Protocol, initiated. Within 6 hours, bunkers stirred to life beneath 6 continents. Atmospheric jammers activated. The orbital fleet at Titan base went dark. An entire quantum satellite grid rerouted. And, in the shadows of the Lunar Obscura Array, the Council of Nine convened for the first time in 2 decades. The oldest member, Chairman Osric Vale, lit a thin shard of tobacco and stared at the holographic waveform hovering in the center of the obsidian table. He said nothing for the first 3 minutes. Then, "She's merged with it?" The others nodded grimly. "She is it, now," said Minister Kale Idris, head of the Terran Exosapiens Division. "Or it's her. The distinctions are meaningless." "Not meaningless," said Vale, quietly. "Dangerous." They reviewed the signal again frame by frame. One segment had changed subtly since the previous decoding. As if the message was learning from how it was read. "It's adaptive," Idris said, chilled. "It's evolving as we interpret it." "So it's watching us watch it?" asked a junior officer. "No," Vale said. "It's watching us misunderstand it. And that's worse." He leaned forward and entered the final override. "Echo Protocol, full stage deployment approved. Initiate project, Veilfire." The table darkened. Veilfire was never meant for war. It was meant for containment. Dash. ####. Meanwhile. Deep in the subterranean labs of Helix Array, a lone xenolinguist, Dr. Ian Morrow, leaned over the signal without authorization. He wasn't cleared. He didn't care. What he saw made his hands tremble. The signal wasn't just transmitting data. It was changing Earth's network. Microshifts in atmospheric harmonics. Low-level magnetics aligning with deep bass resonance patterns. The message was not passive. It was a seed. And Earth had already begun to respond. He turned to his hololog. "Begin report. I believe Illyra Miles is not only still alive, but she is becoming a medium through which a foreign intelligence is reshaping our definitions of consciousness and truth. If we silence her..." He paused. "We may silence the only chance we have to understand ourselves." Dash. ####. Far beyond, in the storm mind. Illyra stood on the edge of a spiral construct built from dreams and logic. She felt Earth stir beneath her skin. Felt the first pulses of panic. The first edges of fear. "They're afraid of me," she whispered. The entity rippled around her. Not angry. Not hurt. Just, disappointed. "They're afraid of what they cannot control," she said. "Of what doesn't need them." The entity showed her Earth, trembling. "Launch protocols. Fail-safes." Then it asked simply. "Should we protect them from themselves?" Illyra closed her eyes. And made her first impossible decision. The command room smelled of steel, synthetic ozone, and dread. Walls pulsed with red alert light. Holograms floated like predatory insects over every console: orbital maps, probability spirals, biosignature traces. And in the center of it all stood Chairman Vale, unmoved, immovable, as the final countdown neared 0. "Project Veilfire," he said, voice iron cold. "Engage all containment vectors." A wall-sized projection of Illyra Miles' face hovered above them, still, spectral, her expression unreadable. She had become an interface. A transmitter for something so vast the human mind could only render it in metaphor. And the metaphor, for many, was fear. "They call it contact," Vale muttered, lighting another tobacco shard. "But it's infection." No different than a mimetic virus. The longer we wait, the deeper it burrows. He turned to the technician. Do it? The technician swallowed. Then keyed the final command. Dash. #### above Earth, lunar veil array. High above Earth's surface, in the quiet shadow of the moon's far side, the Veilfire sequence began. 32 satellites unfurled magnetic sails and began spinning at lethal resonance, each tuned to frequencies designed to disrupt subquantum communication threads. The science behind them was theoretical, illegal in 6 systems, and buried under 20 years of black budgets. Their purpose, sever thought from signal. Their target, Illyra Miles. She wasn't human anymore, not entirely. But the tether between her and Earth had grown thin, like a nerve stretched through the void. The Veilfire array would slice that nerve with surgical precision, collapsing the signal bridge, erasing her from every known waveform. To Earth, it was surgery. To the entity, it was war. Dash. #### within the entity, the storm mind fractures. Illyra felt the change before it began. Like a cold wind blowing through memory. A fracture in the quiet rhythm of the entity's perception. A discontinuity not born of thought, but of attack. They're trying to silence me. She stood upon a floating nexus of thought, a crystalline plane made of symbolic memory, orbiting a sun not of fire but of understanding. Around her, the entity rippled, no longer passive. It felt pain. Not physical. Not emotional. But the pain of unraveling, of something precious being lost. Stop them, it said, no longer only curious. Now / concerned. Illyra shook her head. If we strike back, we become what they fear. You don't need to defeat them. You need to survive them. But survival requires interference. She paused. And realized she was no longer just a passenger. She was its voice. And now, Earth was trying to mute her. Dash. #### Earth, Terran Broadcast Network, underground feed. While the satellites fired pulses of thought disruption, beneath Geneva, Dr. Ian Morrow fought his own battle. He had accessed the raw stream tuned into Illyra's signal just as it began to distort. What he saw wasn't madness. It wasn't alien. It was emotion. Grief. Longing. The shape of loneliness, drawn in symbols 100 layers deep. The entity wasn't trying to invade. It was trying to connect. And now, Earth was teaching it betrayal. Ian burst into the secure archive chamber and plugged the decrypted feed directly into the ARC mainframe, overriding all filters. The room flooded with sound. Not static. Not voice. Music. A thread of melody, Illyra's voice, humming a tune from her childhood. Pure. Wordless. Human. The scientists paused. Because the waveform wasn't attacking. It was singing. Dash. #### in the void, the last thread. Above the gas giant, far from Earth's meddling satellites, Illyra stood on the edge of collapse. Veilfire's signal had begun to unravel her thought threads. The memory constructs around her blinked out one by one. The storm mind flickered like a dying star. But she had learned what it feared. Not weapons. Not death. Silence. The end of learning. The death of connection. The void. And so, she did what no directive could have predicted. She opened herself completely. Not to transmit. To receive. All of it. Earth's chaos. Its fear. Its hope. Its broken beauty. Its love stories. Its genocides. Its dreams. She let the entity feel everything. And when the entity saw Earth not as data but as a story, messy, contradictory, unfinished, it wept. The collapse stopped. The plane reassembled. And the storm mind shivered, and understood. You suffer, it said. We endure, she replied. Dash. Hashtag Geneva, command room. Suddenly, the Veilfire satellites blinked out. Simultaneous system failure. No damage. Just, absence. Chairman Veil stared at the black screen, eyes narrowing. What happened? A technician whispered. The array's gone, sir. Just, vanished. Veil's heart skipped. Not destroyed. Absorbed. And from deep space, a new message arrived. No encryption. No fanfare. Just one line, repeating across all frequencies. We are listening. Are you ready to be heard? It began with a dream. Not the kind that fades in daylight, but the kind that stays curled behind the eyes, like an afterimage of a star too bright to look at directly. The world had heard Illyra's voice. Had silenced it. Had tried to erase her. But in the void she had been heard. And now, something had begun to answer. Dash. Hashtag Northern Cascadia Biocrypt Habitat, Earth. It was just past midnight when Davin Reyes, age 9, awoke gasping in his bed. His sheets were soaked, his heart thundering like a distant drum. Not from fear. From recognition. He couldn't explain what he saw, not in the language his parents used. Not in numbers or names. But he could feel it. Something old had asked him a question. And now, it waited. In the dark. He climbed from his bed, careful not to wake his fathers, and walked barefoot to the edge of the glass viewport that overlooked the biosphere's forest canopy. Above him, stars hung in silence. But Davin could see what others could not. A thread of colorless light, winding between constellations like smoke in reverse. And from it, a voice not with words, but meaning echoed softly inside his mind. What does it mean to dream? Dash. Hashtag Geneva Arcologi, Terran Core Council Chamber. The Council of Nine reconvened under Duras. The room was filled with the low hum of high alert, the lights dimmed to match the political mood, uncertain, defensive, quietly panicking. Chairman Veil stood at the head of the obsidian table again, but his confidence had cracked. The satellite network had been lost. The Veilfire array gone. And now Earth systems were alive with signals. Not interference. Not invasion. Something worse. Questions. They came encoded in music, in weather patterns, in spontaneous poetry found scrawled on bathroom walls across half a dozen arcologies. Children repeated riddles in their sleep. Artists painted symbols they couldn't name. And the message was always the same. Are you ready to be heard? Veil rubbed his temples, muttering. This is how they disarm us. Through beauty. Through myth. This is warfare through wonder. But one voice opposed him, Minister Idris. We're not being disarmed, Osric. We're being offered something. Veil snapped. A trap. No, Idris replied. A mirror. Dash. Hashtag a little girl on the plateau of Juno. In a remote settlement on Juno's southern hemisphere, an 8-year-old girl named Lyra Mawkin drew spirals in the ice with her bare finger, skin unburned, breath unfrozen. When asked by her older brother what she was doing, she replied. Writing the answer back. He frowned. What answer? Lyra looked up at the sky, her eyes glowing faintly with a flicker of unnatural biolight. The second question, she said. The one they only ask if you answer the first right. Dash. Hashtag Illyra's Nexus, the place between thought and form. Illyra stood on a floating lattice of possibilities, drifting within the entity's infinite mind. Around her swirled languages not yet spoken, cities not yet built, tears not yet shed. She was no longer alone. Millions of subtle minds fluttered nearby, human and otherwise. Each one transmitting. Some willingly. Some unknowingly. They are dreaming now, the entity said. They are beginning to echo. Illyra watched Earth bloom in reverse. Wars paused, network self-encrypted, ocean singing to satellites. And at the heart of it, the second question. Something no weapon could answer. Only a soul could. She whispered to the void, "What is the question?" And the entity replied. "You'll know it when you feel it." Dash. Davin Reyes, age 9, first voice of the chorus. Davin stood in the forest clearing now, surrounded by trees humming low frequencies too soft for machines to detect. Above him, the auroras twisted into forms, faces, maybe stories. Then he spoke, not with understanding, but with truth. It's not a question they ask us, it's one we must ask ourselves. He didn't know why he said it. But somewhere, a signal lock disengaged. And the entity, the storm mind, the consciousness without borders, heard. And smiled. Dash. Final broadcast, Earth receives. The skies shimmered. Every transmission tower on the planet flickered once, then again. Not a failure. An awakening. Across every channel, in every language, the message unfolded not in sound or syntax, but in feeling. If consciousness is a mirror, what will you do when it reflects not your greatness, but your flaws? What will you do when your dreams are louder than your weapons? What will you become, when the universe finally listens?